name is Jerry Gill. Today is October 17th, 2008. I'm visiting with Dr. Clark, Dr. C.J. Clark, in the Conoco Phillips OSU Alumni Center on the OSU campus. This interview is for the O State Storage Project, which is part of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Dr. Clark, welcome back to campus.
Well, it's nice to be back. After
I
many
understand
years.
It's been maybe, 1950s or something since you were on campus?
We actually left Oklahoma in 1956, but last time associated with OSU, it was Oklahoma A&M at that time, was in 1953.
Well, Doctor, first of all, maybe sort of back up a little bit.
Sure.
There's probably a kind of a story about how you got to OSU, but first of all, where did you grow up and a little bit about your early life, your family? Can you share that with us?
Yes, that was in Lansing, Michigan. And I was born in Jackson, Michigan, not very far from Lansing. And we spent our whole youth in that area and graduated from high school at Lansing Eastern. And what year was that? My goodness. Must have been 43 maybe. Something like that.
Well, there's got to be a story. I mean, did you come directly out of high school to OSU, or did you
no.
military service?
How I got to OSU is an interesting story, because after I graduated from high school, World War II was in progress, and I started my college career at Michigan State, and that was in East Lansing. That's very close to Lansing. It's
sure.
You know, when I grew up, everything was associated with Michigan State, and but as a result of the war going on, I was in the ROTC program there, but I decided, well, maybe I would prefer to be in the Navy program. So I joined the Navy. It was called a V-12 program. What it was is you continued on in college, essentially, but you were in the Navy, and it was all Navy run. And that college was Western Michigan, at Kalamazoo, Michigan. So, as I say, that was in the V-12 program. So I went there a year and a half or 2 years, something like that. And when you graduated from there, then you went into a pre-midshipman program and then midshipman's program at Northwestern University. As a result of that, I got my commission, and then there wasn't much alternative except to be sent to the islands, trying to retake Japan. But they had a language program. The Navy did, and if you qualified for that, then you could study Japanese language. Well, it turns out that I did qualify for that. So the alternative being given some kind of a landing craft and going across the Pacific looking for an island or something was not something that I anticipated, although a number of my colleagues did. And I heard stories that some of them even got lost. I mean, this whole officers candidate program was shortened, so I'm not quite sure how really good sailors that we were. At least I wasn't too good. Anyway, as a result of that, the language program was in Colorado, University of Colorado, Boulder. However, that was full. I mean, this was when we anticipated a long time to get into Japan. And so they expanded that program and opened an Oriental language program here at Oklahoma A&M at that time. And I was sent here. And now you couldn't get married until you got your commission. So as soon as I got our commission in '45, and then we got married, and my orders were to come to Oklahoma. We got on a train, which led us off in Ponca City. Ponca City was an interesting name, but then we still had to get to Stillwater. We didn't know where that was. We got on a bus. We were the only non-native. By that I mean the bus was filled with Indians. This was our introduction. So what is, I can't believe this. I don't know, it must have been 10 or 15 minutes. The bus stopped. They all got off. We learned later that's the Ponca reservation. We didn't know that at the time, of course. And in that 4-lane road now going up there, I can't believe it was a 2-lane. A lot of it was gravel. So we came into Stillwater, and that's how we lived at 203 North Duck, a little garage apartment. It was above the garage. We were just there recently, and that's been bulldozed away. As now OSU really expands unbelievably from when we were here. So anyway, that's how we got here, and so I did that program, and then the war ended. The program was an 18-month program, and it wasn't finished. And they said, well, are there a number of you that want to stay on? This was taught by Nisei, that is Japanese Americans, and of course these are ones that were not in the camp those days. So I said, yeah, why not? So I finished that program. I don't know, there must have been, 20, 30 of us that finished that program. And then the result of that, now the war's over. I got discharged in Memphis, came back here, and my original interest was mathematics, and then as a result of that, I got to know Dr. Diamond, Ainsley Diamond, at that time was head of the math department, and he's well, essentially before that, I contacted the officials administration here and wondered what it would take to get a degree, a bachelor's degree. And they said, well, let's see. So they got my credits from Michigan State and Northwestern and Western Michigan, and put them all together. And they said, well, also we can use what you did here, because it was equivalent to a master's in Japanese, as a major. You can walk out of here today with a degree. I said, that sounds good.
Degree is good.
So as a result of being in the Navy and spending it in Oklahoma, which is weird, and the war is over, I have a degree. And as I say, Dr. Diamond said, gee, we got all these people coming back on the GI Bill, how about staying on here working on a master's? And I said, well, that's interesting, but we're from Michigan, and I'll go back up there and see what's going on. So we went back, and nothing was going on compared to what was happening here. So I said, hey, I'm back. And so I worked on my master's degree with a graduate teaching assistant program.
So could I just kind of ask, you finished that first year where you kind of cobbled that together.
Yeah.
Was that 48?
46.
46, and then you were working on your master's from 46 to
48.
48. Okay.
Yeah, I got the master's in 48.
Well, so really in a sense, you didn't have the traditional undergraduate experience that
None.
most people had here.
No,
Mm-hmm.
that's why a little bit of the alumni in my class, who knows my class? I mean, 46, I didn't know any of the other, quote, civilian students at the time.
Were you in that program? Were some of the OSU faculty teaching some of those? It was all military faculty.
It was all military. The fact is, we lived off campus, but most of the people lived, I think it was Cardell Hall, as I recall.
Yeah,
and those were all, as I say, Nisei Japanese. I guess they took them out of the internment camps. They were young. In fact, we made close friends with a number of them.
So on your master's program then, kind of maybe talking about it, then we're talking a bit about the doctoral program and the master's program. You had more of a student experience, although a graduate student
That was a student experience.
Mm-hmm.
We're all,
although
they were all back from the war usually, and so it was, even that was not the heavy OSU experience that happens these days, I'm sure.
What some of the some of your experiences as you living here? Maybe you can talk about. You said you lived off campus, and when you come back, also did you? Where did you live?
As I say, we lived at 203 North Duck.
Duck. So your master's program. That's where you live.
Yeah. Even though I was in the Navy, the Oriental language program was 24/7, as they say today. But then the war was that way too. So it was very, very heavy, and we had a 2-hour written exam once a week and an hour oral exam every Saturday. And I used to go, after I'd get out of that for relaxation, there was a record store right next to, or very close to Campus Theater, which was on the corner over here, gone now. And that's the kind of thing that took place there.
Well, picking up on that, what did you married at the time, living off campus in your master's program? What did you do for entertainment? Did you have friends? Did you?
Well, we had friends that were in the program, so we would have social get-togethers with them. We had there were programs that were taking place at the auditorium here on campus, which I gather has been bulldozed and replaced by the Performance Center. And we'd go there. In fact, as our first child was born here in Stillwater in '46, and with a Navy doctor who, as I say, everybody stayed on another few months until a number of things got wrapped up. And we would go. There were a number of programs at the auditorium, and we'd go there. And we danced. We still dance, ballroom dance, and so we would dance backstage when there would be these bands playing.
Well, and I guess swims is right up the street. And never make the swims and do some activities there.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, we went swimming often, particularly when it was hot, at the municipal pool down south town, seems like.
What? So kind of come back. You talking about Dr. Diamond?
Yeah.
You talking about how did a little bit. Might talk about some of the professors that you knew at the time and how you Dr. Diamond got you engaged. You was head of the department at the time.
Right.
And there was professors you particularly remember that was.
Well, O.H. Hamilton and Allen. What was his first name? I can't remember. Dr. Allen. There were some other people. Mendenhall, by the way, Dr. Mendenhall was sort of did the astronomy kind of things that were associated. The department then was small, of course, right after the war. There was somebody in statistics.
So the offices, where was the math department housed at that time?
Pardon?
Where was the math department housed at that time?
Quonset huts.
Quonset huts. I remember.
And walking through up here, I saw some pictures of those Quonset huts. That that was the immediate expansion activities at that time. Also, we got together with the Japanese teachers too. Hori-san was a very close friend of ours.
You mentioned Dr. Diamond. Do you recall the faculty controversy over the loyalty oath? Because Dr. Diamond was, and I think he was one of your thesis on your thesis advisor, one of them, and he actually resigned at Oklahoma State and went to University of Kansas over the loyalty oath issue. Were you aware of that? Was that an issue when you were here?
Well, yeah, there was a number of things going on. Well, as I say, I finished my master's in '48 and left to take a job at Curtiss Wright Corporation in Columbus, Ohio. And as a result of that, that's an interesting story too. But I did return here the following year because they were starting a doctoral program, a new program, with Dr. Ehrenstein, who was quite famous. Dr. Diamond. Dr. Diamond was very active in making things happen, I'll tell you that. And so so they started the doctoral program, and then there were, there must have been, I don't know, 4 or 5 of us, I guess.
Did they seek you out for the doctoral program? Did they tell you about it, invite you to participate, or did you find out about it?
No, they invited me back.
Okay.
Yeah, we were only in Ohio 1 year. As I say, I took a job with Curtis Wright Corporation, which I found I didn't care for, and she was pregnant for our second child at that time, and I quit. I came home, told her I quit. She said, "You did what?" Well, the idea was, and of course you're young and brash to begin with, was I'll just go down to Ohio State and, in Columbus there, and I go to the math department, work on a doctorate here or something, and get some teaching. And so anyway, I went down there, and the math department didn't need anybody, but they said, the electrical engineering department was looking for somebody. Again, being young and brash, I assume. I went over to the electrical engineering department. Now, electrical engineering, at least theory, is all math. Mm-hmm. It's all it's just a matter of reading and keeping ahead of students, essentially. And but the problem is, no matter what your rank there, you had to have the lab, teach labs too. Now that was interesting. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's what happened there. So I taught electrical engineering for a year there, and they wanted to keep me on, but as they say, Diamond and Dr. Diamond and Dr. Ehrenstein had this new program that was starting up, and said, come back here.
Looked very attractive to you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we came back.
But did you teach? Were you a teaching assistant or a research assistant at the time also?
Oh yeah, research assistant. It was they had an office of the Naval Research Program, and that provided quite a bit of money, as a matter of fact. And then I taught also.
I'm trying to recall, did Dean Schiller Scroggs, he was dean of College of Arts and Sciences, was it his son? Did you have classes with him at that time?
I know the name, but I can't remember that I did.
Did you ever meet Dean Scroggs?
Well, yes, yeah.
Well, what do you recall about him? What do you remember? Because he was a long time, fairly influential person on our campus for many years.
Oh yes, yeah.
What was your recollection?
Well, I really can't remember. I can hardly remember Dr. Diamond or Dr. Ehrenstein these days.
Maybe one other question, connectional kind of question. Dr. Leroy Folks, who for many years was head of the math department here, he was a student here, I think undergraduate student in the 50s. Did you ever have any activity with him, any connection or classes?
I'm trying to think of who replaced Dr. Diamond. It wasn't that name. There was another name, and he was here for a while.
One of the named Jean Agnew, Dr. Jean Agnew.
Jean Agnew, knew her well.
Didn't know, okay. Well, she and Ted Agnew, her husband was taught in the history faculty.
Right.
But Jean had that policy in those days where both husband and wife, if the husband was employed, the wife couldn't, work, and they finally changed that a little bit later. But
is that right?
Yeah, she was one of the best math instructors we had.
Oh yes.
What do you remember about Jean? Did you have class with her?
Just she was a fellow faculty member at that time, and we did a lot of activities together, the whole department. And I remember as graduate students, seemed like it was Friday afternoon, a number of us gathered at a small, I would call it a beer joint these days.
And hang out.
And hang out, that's right. And as I recall, it was 3.2 beer, because this was dry.
That's right.
That is ostensibly dry. And so a number of us would gather there and get together. Of course, I remember her later, because she often was, she went to all of the American Mathematical Society conferences, and was responsible for gathering all the OSU graduates together and having. I think we had a breakfast every time. I haven't gone to those in many years now.
Well, let's see. You mentioned Dr. Hamilton.
Yes.
O.H. Hamilton. I've heard that Professor Hamilton. he used the Moore method.
Yes, out of Texas.
Out of Texas. What do you remember about the Moore method?
Well, I'll tell you what I remember about the Moore method. Dr. Allen, what was the other? I can't remember his first name now. When I first started graduate work, he was my ultimate professor. He was extremely prepared not only prepared, but he had every lecture written out, and would proceed to go through that in great detail, written out, and you could follow it just beautifully. It was something else. This was it. That's not it. It turned out. Now, O.H. Hamilton's method was the Moore method, where you, in terms of mathematics, you hand out a page of axioms, postulates, and theorems, and of course there is nothing else. And what you do is go from these axioms, postulates, and prove these theorems. Nothing else. I thought I'd hit a different field of study even. It was radically different, and very hard, very difficult, very frustrating. Just what this all came down to was in a fairly short period of time after I got through that horrendous thing that O.H. Hamilton was my thesis advisor, and he was the ultimate teacher. But and I learned a lot because I taught many years later, in the sense that presenting a beautiful lecture can be appreciated by the students, but what do they learn? They only learn if you essentially pose questions and queries and have them do things without them being told. They have to create, and that was actually a method I used later.
You used that in your career, and then later, did you?
Oh, that became, and that wasn't too popular either. When I taught at a number of places, but at San Jose State University, where I did essentially my academic work, teaching later, and I was teaching in the School of Business. I was teaching quantitative studies in the School of Business at this time, and even the dean didn't appreciate, because students would complain. I would ask them something, and of course I hadn't told them yet, and that was one of their complaints. He hadn't even told us yet what. So that whole query method, I actually developed there at San Jose State under the acronym of DIRG. It was the technique of direction, have them do something, and then individual response. They all had to even write something, rather than be in a group, because if you have to write something, you have to think on your own. Then there was, DIRG, IR, and group interaction. Then they were in small groups. They'd get together and discuss this. And then evaluation, where I would call a member from each group, and they would give some response, and I'd write that on the floor. And then the lecture, essentially what it was, came about as discussing what these responses were. It was interesting.
What kind of then sort of finishing your career, and then I want to ask you a little bit more. But having 3 degrees from Oklahoma State University, and being one of the first, I think, 3 individuals who received a PhD in mathematics.
That's right.
Do you take pride in that? Is that
special
to you?
Yeah, we were the first 3. There could have been 5 who went to Kansas and finished up there, and but 3 of us. There was Abul Ghazem, who was an Iranian student, and Dal Graneth, who was a student from Texas. They were here even in the master's program too, but I know they were in the doctorate program.
Did you keep up with him over the years?
Yes, we have contact. They're both gone now, and although I've talked to Abul's wife periodically, he ended up teaching at University of Colorado in Boulder, and Dr. Ganeth taught at various places, but he was primarily associated with industry, which I was for a number of years too.
it sounds like from our conversation about the Moore method and so on that you
Oh,
learned a
yeah.
lot. Did you feel like your degrees and instruction learning you got, the education at OSU prepared you for your career?
Oh yes, yes, very much. Well, that technique was well, it left you with creating and taking material or what is there and thinking. And thinking was the idea, but it was so hard in the beginning, so hard.
What, you've alluded to a couple of things. Can you kind of share briefly a little bit about your career, your professional career in your life after you left Oklahoma State University?
Yeah, let's see. I got the doctorate in 1953, and I took a job with Continental Oil Company in Ponca City in the geophysical research department, and the primary activity that I did there was analysis work for a new geophysical mapping technique where instead of using dynamite to set off and then have geophones arranged to try and map the underground, that they used a technique. We developed this technique of it's actually named vibrosize, where we used a controlled frequencies. That is, it was a large machine essentially tied to the ground, where we did vibration at various frequencies, and used that technique because you could use that with in urban areas and so forth. And having just returned from Conoco Museum, that's was a big thing up there. It's highly many companies, I was told, tried to break that patent. Patent came in 1945. I was there 1954. I was there from 53 to 56 during the development of that, and that became worldwide and is the primary technique today. So I left there right at the peak of that activity, but a couple of things I wanted to study with Dr. Tarski at the University of California in Berkeley, and I had received an appointment at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, to teach, and so it seemed like we should go. We were heading to California, and in California, Sputnik. Well, what happened is I ran into a bunch of colleagues from various universities there, and they said, "Why don't you talk to Lockheed? They're going to open up a research facility in Palo Alto, and and they're looking for people." Well, I talked to them. They said, "What are you making at postgraduate school?" They doubled that.
So Berkeley didn't look near as attractive.
Well, and they said, you won't have any activities for the first year. You can do postdoctoral work at Stanford and various other things. Yeah. So I never made it to postgraduate school. And so I was with Lockheed. Essentially doing basic research. And of course, at that time, computers were starting to come on, and development of them. You didn't go out and buy an IBM. Everybody built their own, and there were huge rooms. And yeah, but one of the primary things I did there was develop a business system model. That was new. Nobody had done that. But a corporate Lockheed, which was in Burbank, they said, would you be interested in doing that? Now, my degree, by the way, my mathematics degree was in pure mathematics, not applied. And Lockheed had gathered over 50 PhDs in mathematics at that time, with essentially no assignments, because they were, of course, looking for big contracts, which came, and so all of that did develop. But I decided that I really should stay there and work on that. And even though my degree was in pure mathematics, closure relation algebra was my thesis topic. I said, well, you know, I could be interested in doing that. Well, it turns out that's the kind of thing that's in operations research, or OR these days, but at that time it didn't have a name or anything else, and there was nothing around on it. So what I had to do was essentially study the corporate structure and the operations of Lockheed, and try it and model that mathematically, which we did. But these days, with the computer capabilities, makes it look thin now. So I was with Lockheed for about 5 years. Then they lost some contracts, and as a result of that, I was laid off. This was an unbelievable emotional problem. I was a hotshot PhD, working with the corporate office and so forth, and however they were kind how they did it. And I went with Sylvania Corporation, which had a research lab there. So I essentially, it wasn't that bad, of course, but at the time it seemed like it. And although I had, and I was with Sylvania about 3 years or something like 4 years, I guess it was. Same thing happened to them. This time I was, in fact, as I was into some research, and they said, well, you know, finish that up. So it was 2 or 3 months later. And I interviewed for a job at Matson Lines, which was doing OR work and developing, at that time, brand new concept, containerization. Would I be interested in that? Well, it sounded interesting, and that was in San Francisco. But at the same time, I interviewed with Texas Instruments in Dallas, or Richardson, north of Dallas. And they wined and dined us unbelievably, kept flying us back there. Now I know what it means to be seduced. Because they made, you talk about, you know, so, hey, we'll do it. So we went to Texas, so we moved there. And we sold everything in California because they knew that'd be a problem about thinking back. And also the idea was, we'll go back to the Southwest. Well, Texas is not Oklahoma. It's some other foreign country. Everybody was very nice. I mean, we never lived so well. You know, a beautiful home, and unbelievable lifestyle. But I don't know. It wasn't Oklahoma to begin with, and so as a result, we were only down there 2 or 3 years, I think, or something. So then I came back to California. OOHRP Corporation had a research lab in the Bay Area, and you know, had me come back to that. And I headed up the department there, and that went for I don't know, another 2 or 3 or 4 years, and it folded. And now OOHRP wanted me to come to the headquarters in Southern California, and we didn't want to go to Southern California. California consists of 2 states, Northern California and Southern California. They're radically different, really. And but as a result of that, there was a new organization called Underwater Sciences that was doing research work in all kinds of underwater activity, and wanted me to come there and head up the research department. So I did that. And then they had, one of the things they were developing was, they were developing underwater techniques for gold mining, which the potential was very lucrative. And another area they were doing new techniques for dredging reservoirs. There was some industrial sabotage. Our competitors, the older techniques, actually physically blew our operation right out of the water, literally. And the company never recovered from that. Now, in the meantime, I had contracts with the Office of Naval, with the China Lake Navy, developing mathematical models for weapons in order to. We were in Vietnam so we could essentially study the effects of blowing up power plants and so forth without blowing them up, of course. And so I novated those contracts and opened my own company, InterScience Systems Incorporated, and took those contracts that were still there from Underwater Sciences and ran those for, I don't know, it's another 3 or 4 or 5 years. Always, by the way, teaching on the side. I always taught evening programs and so forth.
Was this last move? Was this your own business you're talking about, or you?
Right.
It was your own business.
InterScience Systems. Yeah. And I was very active and for a while. Then, as I say, I was always teaching on the side and so forth. And it seemed like, the other thing I would do in terms of academics is every spring, I think I'm going to go teaching full time someplace. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So now that was in March when you interview. So I'd fly around the country, various places, Utah, back Virginia, West Virginia area, a number of places, and you'd get there, and of course it was very bleak looking. March was, trees were still sticks, and there, March, in Northern California, that's when spring started. Everything is blossoming and it's green. I don't know, I don't think I can believe this.
Did you ever get back in?
Never. Well, I did. I finally did.
Teaching the side.
Yeah, a number. Then, at some point, essentially, due to this variety, it was 5 years here, 5 years there, and at that time, there was not a retirement benefit that you could carry from. They were always cashed out and so forth. And it seemed like I better get someplace, and now it seemed appropriate that the academic world might do it. So I made contact at San Jose State University, and then I taught in the engineering program there. I taught did not teach in the mathematics department. I taught in 3 different schools. Social sciences, I was in one of those areas. All of these areas, by the way, had, and that's true of almost every discipline, started to move into the quantitative side of things, building models and so forth. So with my real general background, then I was able to, the discipline wasn't that important. And in fact they were starting the dean of the engineering said, everything is too narrow. We need to develop a systems program in general systems theory. And so I helped develop the graduate program there called Cybernetic Systems. And that was a program that was involved with general systems. And of course, one of the systems I had studied and detailed was a business system. So as a result of that, the business school got a hold of me and said, what about teaching in our quantitative area here? And so that was very interesting. And I eventually went with the School of Business.
You got into your
my
career.
professorship was at School of Business Quantitative Studies, and one of the big areas that came out of that was information systems or management information systems. So that's essentially where I ended up the last 8-9 years in the academic, and then I retired from there in 1989 at the peak of everything. Information systems I didn't feel that it was time for me to retire exactly, although in terms of credits at the university and a number of other things, it seemed appropriate
Good time.
to do
So
that.
now, you actually you live in Washington, the state of Washington now, is that correct?
Yeah, right now. Well, yeah, we still live in California, in Santa
Still
Cruz Mountains.
maintain two homes.
We spend about 2 months or so in Washington, and we come down to California for about a month or so.
You got to go back to California because you have grandkids, kids and
Yeah,
grandkids in
we
California.
have
right?
grandchildren. All our children live in
That's
live
right.
in the Bay Area. Essentially, well, one of them is a county planner in San Luis Obispo. 3 daughters. We had 3 daughters, and so now we have 3 great grandchildren. They're all there. So there's always something taking place. Birthdays, weddings, something, and so it seemed that so that's why we kept the house there. Actually, we can go back there.
Well, a couple more questions. What first time back in many years. What do you think your alma mater now?
Oh my God!
Have you been around campus? Were you able to find some of the buildings?
Well, luckily, you sent me a map, and it took me a while to find what I call the original campus, and I did that by saying, here's the fire station. That's still there.
Old Central.
Old Central, yeah. And then I started to that part of the campus. I could identify with it.
You can remember the student union. It was here a couple years before you left, right?
Yeah. The student union, but I think it's expanded. Maybe
It has. It built a new
it must, because I'm looking at the map. This wasn't the size it was before, but it was essentially new, more or less. Student union was such a nice place.
Are you proud of the growth of your alma mater?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. That was the other thing. And mathematically, it's grown.
Yeah, what about, how do you feel about your math department? You got a chance, and you're going to go over and visit with some
I am
folks
going this afternoon.
What I'm sure you talk about your meetings with Gene Agnew, your national meetings. Have you sort of followed OSU? Have you through the years? And stayed connected.
And I can't think of the name right now, but the fellow there's what is it called? Mathematical. I can't think of the name of it right now. Maybe it's Mathematical Research Institute or something like that, is in the Palo Alto area, and that's headed up by a professor here, was a professor here at OSU.
Great.
So the name is
out there,
yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, and have you through some of your correspondence, through some of your meetings, have you stayed connected to OSU? Do you still
I
keep
haven't
up
stayed
in your department especially?
Yeah, I haven't stayed that connected at all, but I am connected again.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm back here.
Great to have you back. Well, let me just kind of follow this a little bit. Is there, you looking back, are there some special memories, favorite times you had at OSU in your experience here?
Well, the doctoral program is very intense, so there wasn't a lot of activity other than I mentioned. It seemed like once a week on Friday afternoon, a lot of us would gather up there at this. I'd call it a beer joint. I don't know. It was a brand new one. It's not even there now. I guess I couldn't find it.
And it sounded like Dr. Hamilton's. Was it his Moore method? Was pretty special memory, mixed blessing, but a special memory for you.
Oh yeah. Well, it's the only way to teach. I mean, every individual does slightly different technique on that Moore method, and but it requires you to be creative and think.
Well, did just kind of finally did your OSU background experience serve you well in your career? The experience here at OSU, your training in mathematics here at OSU, and your OSU experience, did it serve you well?
Oh, served me extremely well, and it was in pure mathematics. But as a result of it, it's sort of like the classical pianist, once you know a lot about the basics of it all, then you're able to really do anything from that. And that's why I went from pure mathematics into essentially applied math. By the way, pure mathematics is a lonely business. there are 5 people in the country that know what you're talking about. One of them was Dr. Tarski, and but it's socially it's not that great, I think. So I went into applied mathematics and then the engineering aspects of things, and then into the various industries that were involved, and then into the quantitative area in business.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a result of the training here and the basic breadth of that, I was able to feel comfortable and do anything really. I don't know how much quantitative activity is involved in history these days.
Yeah, not too much.
Not
Well,
that
it's
much.
great testimony in your background here.
Yeah.
And I just kind of, gosh, Dr. Clark, closing. Anything else you'd like to bring up or mention that we haven't talked about in closing here?
Oh, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah. After I retired from San Jose State, as I say, I was still at the peak, really, in terms of the intellectual activity. I took a position at College of Notre Dame in Belmont, California, which is a private school, and in their graduate program. And all during this time, I had developed. I didn't use standard textbooks. I had developed my own manuscripts and for all of these courses, actually, and also information systems was another area that I had gone into at big time. And the College of Notre Dame wanted somebody to take their graduate program in the quantitative studies area and information systems. So I went with them, and that was the best teaching in the sense it was all graduate students. The maximum was 10 in a class, and I rotated through these 4 syllabus manuscripts that I had written. And I did that for another, I guess it was 8 years or something like that. So yeah, that was something I'd forgotten about.
Well, Dr. Clark, thank you very much for taking time to meet with us today, and welcome back to OOHRP.